This is Spencer George's Persuasion speech. So our society has a lot of norms and folkways and morals that we believe in and consider normal, like table etiquette and other things that are just considered polite and not rude. And over time, like, for the sake of just progression and human rights, we've gotten rid of a lot of our older norms that are illogical and oppress people, like our norms against gay marriage and premarital sex and male teachers and other things like that. And I'm here to talk to you today about a certain norm that we have in our society, which is against prostitution. And we are Americans, so this is something that seems very morally incorrect to us, but it's not really necessarily that way for most of the world. Next. You can see on this chart, the countries in red is where prostitution is completely illegal. But here, like in Germany, Australia, Mexico, prostitution is completely legalized and it's regulated. And I'm here to talk to you today about why that can actually be very beneficial for society, and not just from a moral standpoint of they have the right to do it, but that really this logically hurts a lot less people and is better for the whole as a community. So there was always a demand for prostitution. Prostitution is one of the oldest markets in history. Sex has always been sold. And really, just if people want something, they will go out and seek it. They will, if there is a demand for something, there will be someone to fill it. And even in these countries where prostitution is illegal, like in the US where it's mostly illegal, besides some counties in Nevada, there are over 1 million active prostitutes, the government estimates. And what this really does is just leave prostitution completely unregulated in our country and in other countries like it. It doesn't actually stop prostitution from happening. It might lessen it, but in reality, all it does is just create like a black market that funnels money to gangs, pimps, and other criminal organizations. So legalizing prostitution takes over these illegal markets. Illegal sex workers face lots of dangers, like abuse from their clients, abuse from their pimps. They are at a very high risk of developing STDs. And just overall, it's a very unsafe, dangerous process. They might be underage. And in countries where it's legalized, like in Australia and Germany, where brothels can be run and regulated, they have laws for how clean they need to be, background checks for their clients and for the prostitutes. And overall, it's a much safer process for everybody that's involved. And so these pimps and gangs that run these prostitution rings in these major cities, especially like in America, so it's very relevant to us because this really does happen, even though most people don't like to think that there's this huge prostitution market. In Atlanta, Georgia alone, in 1 year, according to the New York Times, prostitution made $290 million. And that money was completely untaxed and went straight into the pockets of, well, pimps, gangs, criminals, and sometimes independent prostitutes, but those are very rare in a big city because they're very often abused by their clients and they don't get paid. So legalization makes this money taxable, and it's very good for the community. So prostitution, and then next slide. So this is the $290 million dollars in sex money from Atlanta, and you'll notice that like drugs and guns, both of those sales are lesser than sex, which is crazy to think about because everybody knows about our issues of drug abuse in this country, but nobody thinks about this. And you can see in all these other cities, it's about equal or more sometimes than drug and gun sales. So prostitution may seem like abhorrent to us as Americans, but we really have to think about it more realistically, more logically, and just practically of what hurts more people. So I hope that you can walk away from this speech with a different perspective on the topic, because really what changes legislation, what can make our lawmakers change our legislation to make things safer, to make things regulated, is the public's opinion. They'll do things if they have public support. That's the number one thing that is keeping it from being legalized in America and in other countries, just the stigma against it. And finally, this speech used sources from Business Insider and the New York Times.